Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, Melinda.
How are you today?
I'm doing good. I'm really excited to do this.
I know, me too. And me too, because you have so much that you have to offer.
Oh,
So
thank you.
I'm I'm here with Rebekka Maye. She is a doula and a childbirth educator. And I'm going to start with your bio. Giving birth has been one of the most empowering experiences of Rebecca's life. It is what has inspired her to want to support other families as they welcome their babies into loving arms. Rebecca's life journey has enriched her doula work by helping her to become a more empathic, intuitive, and active listener. Her goal as your doula is to hold space for you, provide comfort physically and emotionally, and encourage you to listen to your intuition as you navigate this journey called birth. Her specialties as a doula include evidence based information, aromatherapy, spinning babies technique, and breastfeeding support. Out of hospital birth and single parent support both have a special place in her heart as well. In addition to being a doula, she also loves supporting families as a postpartum doula, sibling support, placenta encapsulator, and most recently has begun offering Hypnobabies childbirth education classes. Rebecca, is there any more that you'd like to add to that?
The only other thing is I've actually started my process to become a community birth midwife. So I'm currently in school for that as well. Yes.
Awesome. You're like the whole package.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm really interested in your Hypnobabies childbirth education classes, but before we
Yeah.
begin, can you please give sort of a full picture of why somebody would want to contact a doula once they become pregnant or know they're pregnant or even before?
Yeah. So doula just means somebody that helps guide you or holds you. And so there's even full spectrum doulas. So anybody who helps you navigate your fertility to navigating abortion to navigating your pregnancy, your postpartum, and there are even death doulas. So it's just somebody that you have help guide you through whatever process you're in. I specifically just do birth and postpartum. And so the benefits of having a doula with you is that it helps you be able to know what your options are for your birth experience, help you kind of navigate what your preferences are. I usually don't say let's make a birth plan because birth plans get tossed out all the time. Things change. And so we just kind of go through like what are your preferences? What do you bring to your experience? What are the things that you know about birth already? So a lot of times people bring in preconceptions because of what we see on media or what we hear from what other people say to them and what their perspectives of their birth experiences were. And so a doula can kind of help you navigate how you maybe some fears or some excitements and things. And then also, depending on where you give birth, um, what the benefit is that you have somebody that you get to meet with beforehand, that you really get to build a relationship with. And then you bring them with you. So if you go to the hospital, you're not going to ever have met your nurse before. You may or may not have met your provider before, or anybody else that shows up on your team. So when you bring a doula, it means that your doula gets to work collaboratively with the rest of your team in a way that like they already know you. They already know your preferences. They already know your personality, and maybe even your relationship dynamic with your partner. I had a family hire me specifically one time because she goes, he really tries to be helpful, but it ends up not being helpful and it actually just pisses me off. And so she goes, at some point I'm going to get mad at him and I need him to know that it's okay to walk away, and that I'm not going to be left by myself. And so we got to that point in the birth where she just looked at him and was like, you're not helping. And so I looked at him and we laughed and I said, okay, we've reached that point. Go ahead and go out and get some fresh air and grab a coffee, and I'll just sit with her and everything's going to be fine. So when you get to have those conversations with somebody who's on your team ahead of time,
Yeah.
then it means like the nurse happened to walk in at that time too and thought like something crazy was happening. And I was like, no, no, don't worry. We've already talked about this. So, yeah, and then also just somebody knowledgeable. So, I'm birth is my specialty, it is my expertise. And so a lot of times what's really helpful is knowing what's normal and what's not normal. And so you have somebody that you have built a relationship with telling you, hey, actually, like this is not normal and we really need to lean on your team. Or I just want to reassure you this is within the realm of normal. And, here are some options, those kinds of things. Of course, some doulas have specialties around like coping skills and pain management and those things as well.
Yeah, when you're talking about this, it makes me think that you are actually, if we were back in the day and we lived in a village and we were going to give birth, we would be surrounded by our aunties and our
Hmm.
elders to help us through it. They've been through it and they walk us through all of this. And we don't have that. I talked, even myself, when I gave birth, I really didn't know anything about birth. And when somebody asked, well, would you like a doula? It was in the hospital setting. And I had said, well, what's a doula? What does a doula do? And their response was, well, they just sort of help you through the birth. And I thought, I, I'm pretty confident my husband can help me through the birth. He's pretty
Yeah.
supportive, right? But consequently, after having my child and really meeting doulas and understanding what you guys do, I really could have used one because I really didn't know anything about birthing. And when you step into the hospital setting, oftentimes it's very fear-based and it's very urgency-based. And
Mm,
you don't have the capacity to think for yourself about what you need or what could potentially happen because there are so many other methods that could support the birth of a child energetically
mm.
and just within the mother's own body intuitively. And when I've now since learned about how doulas and midwives help mothers to connect to their intuition and their own sense of power and can do spirit, it makes the
Yeah,
birthing process so different.
it does. And the birthing in the hospital is really a tricky situation because I totally understand it. For a lot of people, it's the safest place because you have high risk situations or you have a proclivity or a previous disorder. Um, and for some people, it's the place they feel the safest, and that's okay. But the
Mhm.
reality is that it's a system, and that I happened to just attend two births at the same time. Thank the heavens they were in the same hospital. So I actually was able to be with both of them through their birthing process. I did hire a backup to come and help so that they didn't feel quite alone, but it made me realize why uh, just a whole new reverence for the nurses because here in Portland, Oregon, we really try to do one nurse, one family. It doesn't always work that way, but we really try hard to have it one nurse, one family. In other parts of the country, that's not how it is, and often nurses are juggling two or three families, which is really not a safe situation because the nurse's job is to track vitals and make sure that mom and baby are doing well. And so, if mom needs medicine or baby's heart tones aren't on the monitor or those kinds of things, and you're juggling three families, like, ah. So, what's great about having a doula is that your nurse is actually so busy, like half their job is charting notes, and as I'm becoming a midwife and having to learn how to chart, now I understand why it takes so much time. Like, it's not a quick jot jot thing. It's like, no, you have to, every single detail goes down. And so, your nurses in and out of the room, they're really not trained in their trainings. They're not
Mhm,
trained on comfort measures. They're not trained on physiological, like hydrotherapy and TENS units and aromatherapy and comfort touch. Here in Portland, a lot more nurses are starting to become more trained in spinning babies, which is
mhm.
learning the anatomical and physiological process of birth. So oftentimes nurses are trained on like the medical side of things, but they're not trained on, okay, if baby's head is kind of towards the left side of mom, what position does mom need to get into to help baby's head become a little bit more central? So that's what spinning babies is we're thinking about the dance between mom's body and baby's body. And a lot of nurses just aren't trained in that. And so that's not their specialty of positions and comfort measures and coping skills.
Mhm.
Um, their primary job is mom doing well and is
Safety.
baby doing well, the
Right.
safety. And your
Mhm.
provider generally shows up to talk about kind of what the process is going to look like the game plan, and when you're pushing. Like they really are not with you. They're in and out. And so if you go to the hospital without a doula, your team is who you bring with you. It's your partner and maybe family who
Mhm.
their experience around birth is just a handful. Maybe their own, maybe they're, somebody else's that they went to. And so a doula is somebody that is part of your team that is really specializes in your comfort measures, your coping techniques, what your preferences were. I happen to have a mama who we were doing a birth center birth, and there were signs that it was actually baby might need support after birth. So it was just safest to be in the hospital, and that was fine. And we get there, and um, she was ready for some pain management, so she opted for some nitrous oxide. And the nurse, before we got the nitrous in the room, was like, "Would you like some pain medication for that?" And she goes, "Yes." And I was like, "Whoa, do you know what that is?" And she's like, "Well, no, but it sounds great." Because it was moving very quickly, so birth was really intense for her.
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, it's fentanyl. It's a narcotic, and your
Oh.
preference list, that was the one thing that was like not on the table for you." And in a state of really needing support,
Yeah.
and in birth your prefrontal cortex turns off because your brain is solely focused on what's going on in your brain or in your body. So your rational brain really does turn off. It's part of the process. And so she was like, "I don't really care what it is, go ahead and give it to me." And I was like, "Pause, hold on, like I'm going to advocate for you, to you, for you, of
Yeah.
your rational self said this was the one thing you did not want. The nitrous is on its way, and I promise it is going to be here soon." And
Just
she,
as
okay,
efficient.
yes. So sometimes your doula is somebody who, reminds you what your preferences were, so that in hindsight, there's no regret. There's no, oh yeah, what ifs, or I didn't do that, or I didn't do that. And I did want to do that, but we didn't get to it, and those kinds of things. Um,
Yeah, so the doula is essentially your second brain,
yeah,
which you're
absolutely.
actually gonna need at the time of birth and for probably at least 3 months after birth,
Yes.
right? Because sure, your prefrontal cortex turns off during birth, but afterwards, when it comes back on, you're so lacking sleep that you
Yes.
can't make decisions, and the doula is there to just support everything, like the energy in the household.
Yeah. Actually, psychologically, your brain does not fully go back when you give birth. Um, Psychologically, we're designed to 100% focus on our baby for, I don't really remember how long it is. I would argue the first
3
year at
years.
least, 3 years.
3 years. Mhm.
And so, it's the way in which we forget about everything that goes on outside of our nest. We're designed that way, is that our focus goes explicitly on caring for and nurturing and bonding with our baby. And so, yes, for many, many months and years afterwards, our brain is not the same ever
I
after
know.
having a child.
Thanks for that validation.
Yes. I really think like the first year and a half, it is. They're growing so quickly. You think you figure out a rhythm and it changes.
Yeah.
And sleep is inconsistent for my children for like the first 5 years. Um,
Yeah.
I think all of my children really didn't not wake up for a full 12 hours for the first 3 to 5 years. And so
Right.
we also did some family bed. So for me, it wasn't I didn't lose a ton of sleep because when they would
Right.
wake up at that, 3 or 4 a.m., which is a normal natural phase for us to have light sleep, I
Yeah.
would just bring them in bed and be like, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
Yeah. So going back to your specialty in spinning babies technique, tell us a
Hmm.
little bit more about the spinning babies technique.
Yeah. So kind of it's a lot of that. So spinning babies has three different maneuvers that is kind of taught in the program. And it's really, really helpful for what's called asynclitic or malposition.
Okay.
So it means that baby's head is not engaging on the cervix evenly. And so
Mhm.
it often causes irregular patterns and not a lot of progress because there isn't enough equal pressure on the cervix to kind of melt away. And
Mhm.
so sometimes that happens, or
Mhm.
sometimes baby is just not kind of in the pelvic bowl. And so there could be lots of reasons in which like to get things going and or if labor kind of stalls out in a way that's not normal. So oftentimes in uninterrupted physiological birth, the uterus will take breaks along the way, and that's within the realm of normal. We often really
Mhm.
see it at the transitional phase, like you're maybe 8, 9, 10 centimeters, and your body's going to take a nice rest in order to ramp kind of conserve its energy in order to get to the pushing phase. And so those are normal plateaus and phases of rest. Occasionally you'll get to where somebody's uterus just literally just stops, and it's we're getting on 40 minutes, an hour, 2 hours. That's not normal. It shouldn't stop if you're like 3, 4, 5 centimeters into a birthing process. And so, then what I like to say is we get really inquisical, like we just question and get curious of, okay, baby, what are you telling us? What's going on? I find often in the hospital system, I hear nurses say, like, oh, that baby's just being a trouble or just being a little stinker. And that never quite sit right with me because I feel
Right.
like children tell us what their needs are even before they can communicate. And
Yeah.
so I just always am asking, okay, baby, what are you telling us? Like, why are you not fitting into the pelvic bowl quite right? Do you
Mhm.
need some help? Is your cord short? All kinds of things. And a lot of things are in hindsight. We don't know until afterwards.
Mhm.
But it isn't to say that they're not trying to communicate something with us. And
Right.
so spinning babies is one way in which we can help get baby into an optimal position.
Right.
Now, babies can be born in all kinds of ways. So, babies can be born
Mhm.
sunny side up. They can come out the left and the right and facing all kinds of ways. It has been done.
Yeah.
But, sunny side up. So, OP babies, it's longer and harder to push those babies out because your forehead does not mold the same as the way as the back of your head does. And so, if your baby happens to be sunny side up, spinning babies is one technique you can use to even flip your baby, which is why it's called spinning babies. And so some of the maneuvers is what I like to call kind of like parallel parking your car. So you're going to do an inversion. Your hips go above your head, which kind of encourages baby to come back out of the pelvic bowl or away from
Mhm.
your cervix. And then we do some positions where we encourage baby to kind of shift. So we do shaking the hips and maybe some lunges, hands and knees, encouraging that the heaviest part of our head is the back of our head. And so we're encouraging
Mhm.
the back of the head to go towards the front of mom. And I've even had moms feel the shift and be like, oh my gosh, they moved. I felt it. Great.
Yay!
Even with an epidural, I've had moms feel that. And so
Wow, amazing.
yeah. And then the next thing you do is then you go what's called a side laying release. So we get you laid down and resting with your hips in a specific open position so
Mhm.
that it creates the most width in your pelvic bowl so that it
Mhm.
allows baby to come down into the pelvic bowl in a way that like feels good to them.
Yeah.
So, they can kind of wiggle. So babies are participants in their birth. They do a lot of wiggling and stretching and pushing. And so it
Mhm.
helps them wiggle their way down into the pelvic bowl in a way that hopefully is better positioned for them
Mhm.
and is more evenly pressured on the cervix then to then help the cervix kind of get out of the way. So,
That's beautiful, and I feel like that would really help a lot of instances where doctors would say, "Oh, you need to have a C-section."
mhm.
Just to have those techniques and know that you can do these things, and also because babies can hear us and they already know while you're doing these techniques, you could probably be talking to baby and
Yes.
telling baby what you'd like for them to do, and it would be great if you and that probably works as well while you're
I
doing it.
often have parents talk to their babies because they can hear us
Yeah.
through the womb. And so I
Mhm.
often have them talk to them because your parents' voices are the ones you're most familiar with. And so if
Right.
mom is talking to you, you're more likely to turn towards them. In fact, the last family I did this with, I had dad go to the side of the belly I wanted baby to face, and I just had him
Yes.
talk to the baby on that side. It's like try and get them to turn and listen to you that way.
That's
So
so incredible for
mhm.
dad,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
For the partner experience.
Yeah. He had so much fun. He was like, "I'll do this all day long." Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's
And that was
so
one
wonderful.
instance in which, baby there was too much fluid in mom's belly, and so baby kept turning, left and right and upside down and all the ways, and so we did end up going in, and we, did some spinning babies, and we did some, um, uh ECV, which is the external cephalic variance. And so basically, that we manually turned baby head down, um,
Mhm.
and then kept baby there with some spinning babies techniques. We just kept her doing those so that baby would stay down. And then she ended up with a vaginal birth. So
Oh, that's so wonderful. Yeah, there's so many ways.
yeah. I think the time in which I use it the most is actually back labor. So oftentimes maybe baby is pushing on a nerve or kind of not
Mhm.
facing the right way, and mom's body often can feel it. And
Yeah,
so it creates really intense sensations that is like well beyond the normal level of sensation. And that's not sustainable for most people to have
right.
that level of intensity for many, many hours. So the time in which I really heavily lean on it is like, hey, let's see if we can get baby to like not push on your back muscles as much, or maybe babies not facing the right way, and we can get them to
Yeah,
turn around and not have their head be pushing on your spine. And so that's
right.
the time it's like oftentimes a lot of a lot of times moms are like, I just, the pressure waves are tolerable. This hip pain is that's what's killing me. And so if we can get
Yeah.
baby to kind of turn off of those nerves, then it really changes your birth experience. So
Can you do the spinning babies technique not during birth? If a mother is carrying a child and she's feeling pressure in her hips or the spine or something, can you offer the spinning
yeah.
baby technique just to move it a little bit?
Yeah, so there
Mhm.
are daily practices on their website that is encouraged. And then there's also
Okay.
something called the Miles Circuit, which is very similar, that you can do in your early birthing time to help baby come down
Mhm.
and engage in the correct, or, we encourage baby, but of course, um, you know, they have their own opinions of how they want to find their space out as well. So
Right.
we just do the best we can. But yes, yes, there are things you can do either in your third trimester to help encourage baby get into a good position, and or in your early time as well. Mhm.
Oh, that's perfect. Thank you. So when we spoke previously, you had mentioned that you help mamas walk away from fear.
Yeah.
So can you share with us some of the fear points that you have experienced from the mamas that you've worked with and how you've helped them to embrace love and faith over
Yeah.
fear?
So this is what I teach in my Hypnobabies classes. In Hypnobabies, um, we teach a technique in which is having birth be enjoyable and calm, and in that one in which you feel excited for. So oftentimes we come to our birth experiences with fear of pain, fear of things that could go wrong. We kind of carry other people's stories with us into our own birth experiences as well. Here in our Western culture, I think that Well, actually, many, I think modern culture around the world, the first time in which we experience birth is our own. So we don't really have a lot of experiences to glean from or lean onto of what normal birth looks like before it's our turn. The most
Mhm.
people get their information from media, like movies or
Right.
TikTok or those kinds of things nowadays. And so, in the movies, it's your water breaks and you rush to the hospital and you have this big giant screaming fest of pushing your baby out. And then everybody's happy and you have makeup on, your hair's perfectly done, and you don't have blood vessels burst in your face and all of these things, and that's not what birth is at all. And so I am thankful that we have a lot of YouTube videos these days of normal birth and natural birth, but I think that there's still a disassociation of, like, watching something on a screen versus experiencing it in real life. In real life, you feel the energy and the oxytocin is shared, and experiencing a birth in real life is very, very different. And so in Hypnobabies, we kind of talk about all of the subconscious messages that we've learned throughout our life, from listening to what other people's birth experiences or the things we've seen on TV or maybe the videos that we've watched. And so sometimes we have some preconceptions about what our birth experience might be like. And or the biggest one for us is that birth is painful.
Mhm.
And so oftentimes I've had clients experience birth as just tight squeezing or just really intense or all kinds of different, they would label their experience differently than just pain. Now, have I had people who thought birth was painful? Absolutely, yes. But what Hypnobabies does is it uses hypnosis to kind of, what I like to call, can I share an analogy that I usually share with my clients?
Yes.
Okay. So this is called the bouncer and the bar. So there's many, many bars around town. You've got your country club bar, you've got your like your cowboy bar, you got your upscale, where you classy, you've got your biker bar, all kinds of across the spectrum.
Yeah.
And say you're used to going to the, let's say, classy with a cocktail dress and a martini, like that's your go-to. And all of a sudden, you're trying to get into maybe the biker bar, and you walk up to, and the big bouncer says, "Hey, lady, like, this is not your kind of crowd. This isn't your joint. Like, no, thank you." And so your bouncer is your prefrontal cortex, your rational brain, which is the filter. Every
Mhm.
message or subconscious or conscious messages goes through that filter, right? And so if I come to you and say, "Belinda, you are going to have a birth that is full of peace and calm and joy, and you're actually going to enjoy this experience." You're going to say, "Rebekka, that sounds amazing. I love that." And, yeah, probably not. Like, the reality is gonna be probably not. And so, what we do in hypnosis is we bypass that bouncer. We bypass that rational filter that
Mhm.
says, "I love that idea, but that's not realistic." Right?
Right,
Our our brain is trying to protect us from having magical thinking.
Mhm.
And so what we do is we bypass that to go to the subconscious, and we just introduce ideas of things of, relax your body, relax your pelvic floor. Birth is going to be one of comfort and ease and joy. And
Mhm.
so that way your rational brain can't say no thank you,
Right.
and so we introduce those ideas, and there's daily practice of this. And so, back to our analogy, we bypass the bouncer, we go into the bar, and we say, "Hey, can I have a cosmopolitan?" And they say, "Oh, we don't really serve that here." And so you say, "Okay, great. Do you have cranberry juice and some vodka and, a glass?" And they're like, "Oh, actually, we do have those ingredients." So you go into your brain and you say, "Can I have some oxytocin and some serotonin and some melatonin? Can I have that relaxing thing that kind of gets me to sleep?" And your brain says, "Oh, actually, I do make those. I do know how to do that." And so the more you do it, every time you go into that bar, pretty soon that bartender is going to say, "Oh, you're that person that orders that drink. I've got all your, here it is. I've already got it combined for you." So every day you practice your hypnosis, your body already says, "Oh, I've got that oxytocin, melatonin, serotonin concoction." So the minute you hear your hypnosis tracks turn on, your body
Mhm.
all of a sudden has that ready for you. So you no longer have to keep ordering it, it's already on tap
Yes.
for you. And then what happens is then we start introducing ideas of, here's some hypnoanesthesia, so that I'm going to tell you that when intensity comes, your body's actually going to feel numb or tingly, or everybody kind of has a different association of what hypnosis feels like to them, but basically
Mhm.
from the middle of your chest down to the middle of your thighs, so that your pelvic floor can relax during your birthing time. And that's what builds a more comfortable birth, is when you can relax your pelvic floor and just ride the wave instead of fighting
Mhm.
it. And
Mhm.
so the more you do it, the more you go into the bar, the more you order, they become familiar with you, the more easier it is for you to say, "Hey, I brought a friend this time, and I can bring more friends." And then pretty soon the bartender or the bouncer is like, "Oh, hey, you now look familiar. Now I'm not going to fight you anymore. Bring in your
Right.
friends." And you start changing the environment of what was going on in your brain. And so accepting what being grounded feels like, and what being peaceful feels like, and what being joyous. And so we teach in Hypnobabies, we teach our bubble of peace. So we have a practice in which, if somebody starts sharing their hard birth stories or their fears of whatever your birth choices are, um,
Mhm.
you put up your bubble of peace and you say, "I only accept information that is helpful for my birthing process." And you put up your hand and you say, "Oh, no, thank you. We're actually not taking advice about this. And I'm
Yeah.
not listening to birth stories until after my own experience." And you're protecting yourself from other people's fears.
Yeah.
And so, what this does is, in your hypnosis, you're training your body to be calm and relaxed and accepting that birth can be joyous. Yes, it is hard pushing a
Yeah.
baby through your
Of
body.
course. Right.
Yes, it can be
And we can do
painful at
hard things.
times. Yes,
Yeah.
and we can do hard things. And so, not only are you training your body to do medical grade hypnosis or medical grade anesthesia for your body, you're
Mhm.
also then rewriting your neural pathways in your brain to do that birth is not one of fear and pain and anxiety and intensity and heightened, but that birth, your birth experience, is one of joy and calm and peace and thoughtful decision making, and not decision making out of fear, but one that is calm and present. And so the more you practice that, the
Right.
more those neurons, those neural pathways, get stronger and stronger and stronger, so that when you go into your birth experience, yes, plans change, yes, hard things come about, but that you can still say, my birth experience has been one still of calm and peace and rational decision and joy. Like I still
Mhm.
enjoyed the birth of my baby, even if it took some turns that were unexpected.
Right. Right. So, what do you think is the time that people could start to practice this Hypnobabies technique? Like
Yeah.
time backwards from when you think you're going to give birth.
So the third
Mhm.
trimester is when it's best. We do have some maintenance tracks, so things that you listen
Mhm.
to. You still continue to practice the different techniques that you learn, and the more you do it, the longer you do it, the more ingrained it is into your body and your brain. But
Mhm.
we find that starting class around 28 to 32 weeks is a great time to start the class, because it is a 6-week series. And so by the end, you're somewhere close to or within your due time. And remembering that your due time is anywhere between, um, well, I consider people's due time 36 to 42 weeks,
Mhm.
because you can have a totally healthy, normal baby at 36 weeks. And so, and you can have a community birth starting at 36, 37 weeks. And so I consider people's due windows 36 to
Yeah.
42.
Right. That makes sense. And I
Yeah.
feel like you could probably enact that peace bubble the minute you find
Mhm.
out that you're pregnant.
Yes.
And be able
Yeah.
to just say, like, when people are eager to share their birth stories, I can listen and it won't affect my own psyche.
Yeah. I really think it just has to practicing those boundaries of, I would love to hear, but here's the thing is that oftentimes people don't realize in which the way they processed their birth. So, when it comes to your birth experience, I always say literally like clients that were really close together had almost verbatim birth experiences of just how it went. And yet for instance, they had really long early phases and then really intense active phases and pushing and birth just they ended up choosing things that they didn't think that they would choose in the time. And they literally went exactly the same. And one family said, we're really happy with our birth experience. It wasn't really quite what we planned, but gosh, like it was beautiful and amazing, and we love our baby. And the other family said, that was the hardest thing we've ever done. We were really unprepared and really didn't wrap our heads around what birth was. And we don't think that there's any preparation that we could have done that prepared us for this experience.
Right. Right.
uh, and birth
Fair.
was really hard for us,
Yeah.
and yet it was the same exact. On paper, it was the same,
Yeah.
but their perspective going into it was very, very different. And so, one of my goals is not that you're going to have, an X, Y, and Z looking birth, but that your
Mhm.
perspective going into it is that
Mhm.
you're nothing is wrong with your body, nothing is wrong with your baby, but that sometimes things happen unexpectedly, and or
Yeah.
sometimes you end up getting into it and it's not what you expected. um, and so you're willing to maybe try some of that nitrous oxide, which maybe you didn't think you would need beforehand, or those kinds of things. And so that you go into it with a perspective of
Mhm.
one that this can be a joyous experience. And and so anyhow, when people share their stories, they don't often have that filter of
Mhm.
when they share. They often share the hardest moments, or the big things that were unexpected, or their own fears. And oftentimes when people share their birth experiences, they're reliving that trauma themselves, or they
Mhm.
are reprocessing it, verbally processing it out loud to you.
Right.
And or they're projecting their own experience onto you. And so one of the healthy boundaries people who are thinking about becoming pregnant and or be pregnant in their early phases is to have that healthy boundary of I only want to hear positive experiences, because there
Mhm.
are thousands, millions of positive birth experiences that went just fine.
Yeah.
But the ones
Right.
that stick out are the ones that are of fear
Right.
and didn't quite go right, or ones that were
Right.
traumatic. And those are the ones that are the loudest. Those are that squeaky wheel, right? And
Yeah.
so it's really important to seek out and find the birth experiences that were normal, and ones that were of joy, and that people can share have positive birth experiences.
Yeah, and this conversation and what you're saying is a really good reminder for people who are eager to share their birth experiences, that if you
Mhm.
didn't have such a good experience and you want to share something that's a little bit fearful, maybe we could spend some time to work through our own birth traumas,
Yeah, and there's
you
a time and
know?
a place. There is a time and a place to process and share and be honest about
Yeah.
some of the challenges that come with birth. 100%. I'm definitely not saying, like, keep it in, hide it, be quiet. Not at
Right.
all. We do need to share the hard parts and the
Right.
unexpected parts, but there are times and places, and newly expecting parents, first time expecting parents,
Right.
those are not that is not the appropriate time and place to be
Right.
sharing the hard
Share it
stuff.
with others who have had their babies already.
Yeah.
Not
Or
a,
or groups.
Yeah.
specific mommy groups or postpartum groups, or
Yeah.
there are therapists out there who specialize
Mm.
in
Oh,
postpartum.
yeah. Mhm.
There are, or your trusted friends, the people who will hold your story with grace
Mhm.
and understanding and empathy, because you never know. For instance, I shared with my first birth, I shared something that I felt like was a neutral share with somebody, and
Mhm.
they years later said, "Oh yeah, that trauma piece that you shared with me." And I was like, "Oh,
Oh.
that actually wasn't, no, that wasn't hard for me. That wasn't, it was just an observational thing I had about my own body." And they interpreted it as that was a really hard
Oh.
point for me. And I was like, "Oh no, that's no." So you never know how other people interpret your story as well.
Wow.
And so when you share your hard things, share with people that you can trust and that will hold your story. Um,
Right.
and not just out there to the winds, because you never know how
Right.
people will interpret.
Right. Right. It's
So,
true. Thank you for that. And when we met previously, you had
mhm.
mentioned, you had talked about like a mama box. And I
Yeah,
want us to share it here because I feel like once we put it into the universe, it will
things might
probably
happen.
deliver,
Yes.
right? And so
Yes.
it'll come into fruition much easier and quicker. So talk about the new mama box.
Yeah. So I have been doing some more research since we last spoke. And so there are some here in the United States, but it hasn't quite made its way to Oregon yet. And so the model that I love is based in Finland, where every family gets a care package box that is about the size of what a little bassinet would be. And theirs is actually has really cute print on the outside. So it's not like a cardboard box. It's different material, and it's got cute prints on it, but it's a box that comes with everything that a baby and mom and birthing person would need in the first year. So it comes with everything from a long sleeve and a short sleeve onesie from 0 to 0, all the way up to that first year. It comes with some socks and some hats and some nursing pads and some nipple balm and some postpartum care things for mom, a baby blanket, and then a pad. And the pad at the bottom can either be put in the box as used as a bed, it can be taken
Mhm.
out and used as a changing pad, and then in Finland, there's ones where you can get where they unfold and they become a play mat. And so
Incredible.
baby has a safe, clean place to play on the ground. And so what's great about these is that every baby starts their life off with the same chance of care, so that no
Mhm.
baby goes without, clothes and socks and shoes, and well, maybe not shoes. I don't think those come in the box, but you know, oh, I think that it also comes with a little uh, like coat or sweater that's multi
Cute,
sizes,
something
you know.
warm.
Yeah, and a summer hat and a winter hat and all of those kinds of things, so that no matter what your financial standing might be or whatever, your situation in life might be, that your baby, you don't have to worry about your baby being able to have at least socks and an outfit and a hat on.
The
Uh,
essentials.
but just the basic essentials for
Yeah.
your baby for that first year. And so in my research, I have found there is a nonprofit out there who is offering something similar, not quite the same, but something
Mhm.
similar to Areas of Relief. And so I do know right now down in Florida with Hurricane Helene, they are
Yeah.
trying to get things to birth centers down there, some boxes,
Wonderful.
and it's not quite the same, I think it's just, actually, I think it's a bag. This particular company, I can't remember off the top of my head what they're called, but it's a bag and it's full of like diapers, wipes, and some outfits. And so just some basic care for
Basics,
baby.
really, really basic.
Real basic. So my vision is a little bit more, that first year is a little bit
Mhm.
more than just like, trying to get baby some essential items for the first like few months for baby. But I just think it's really important that I think that in our culture there's some major gaps for that postpartum time for families, whether it's, not having universal care parental leave act,
Mhm.
which has not
Mhm.
passed here in Oregon. We just got one that you can apply for, I think, but it's very limited and it depends on if you work for a company, things like that. But here in Oregon last
Right.
September, it just passed that you can even apply for parental leave at all in general outside of a
So
company.
ridiculous.
And also things like in other places, or here in depends on the county and if you're connected, having a care provider or a nurse or some kind of medical trained person coming into the home and checking on you. Different counties have different programs. And so
Right.
not everybody has the finances to be able to pay for a postpartum doula. Not everybody knows what a postpartum doula is or that you could
Mhm.
pay for night support. Gosh, with
Mhm.
one of my biggest dreams for this is because with my first, I had postpartum mood disorder and I didn't know it. I didn't really the thing is when you're in it, your brain is such in a fog, you don't realize how hard you're struggling until that brain fog kind of goes away and it's in
Right.
hindsight that it's like,
Right.
"Oh, I didn't really need to be struggling that hard." And postpartum doesn't need to be that hard. And if I knew that I could have paid somebody to come hold my baby so that I
Right.
could just get some sleep,
Yeah.
because that's really it was just sleep exhaustion
Right.
really was what it was. And for
Right.
those first few, gosh, probably 3 months, I really, really struggled because my baby wanted to eat every 2 hours around the clock for well into the third month, which,
Yeah.
no, for most people, that goes about 6 weeks until baby
Mhm.
starts getting a little bit longer naps. And that was not my experience. And so if I had the knowledge of knowing that I could
Right.
have invited somebody to come in because when you get to 6 weeks, all of your friends and family have gone back to their own lives and their own
Right.
work families. And
Right.
and so your support system usually trickles away after 2 or 3 weeks. And so postpartum doula care is so important, but also it's not affordable for every family. And there are some pro bono options out there. There are some programs you can apply for. The state, if you're on state insurance, there are some things, but it's like 12 hours, which is sometimes only 3 days, which is not sustainable
Right.
if you need long-term help. And so my vision is that that we just start creating programs that really hold families and really are more family centric than
Yeah, it's
than
so
what we have.
important.
Mhm.
It's really important, and what's great is we can start from exactly where we're at,
Yeah.
right? So doulas can find other support doulas to kind of fill in the gaps, which is what one doula that I know has done
Yeah.
for a family that she works with, right? And then also kind of just starting from there and then expanding because it
Yeah.
all just happens here. Like we don't have to go big. Let's just start here.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, one of the biggest things I do as a doula is offering resources and
Yeah.
getting people connected to the resources that they need. And
Yeah.
so whether it's pelvic PT therapists, lactation consultants, potentially birth trauma therapists, all the way to postpartum exercise groups where you're like meeting with other people who are also bringing their babies.
And
To
education, because people
yeah.
need to understand that when they're having a baby, the baby shower registry
Mm, yeah.
would really be helpful to have money for these things, for the
Yes.
doula for past, 6 week, past
Yeah.
3 months.
Or even shifting some of our cultural things around instead of baby showers, mother blessings.
Yes.
So,
Mhm,
baby showers are like
mhm.
the big marketing thing. It's so many companies because that's when, you buy a bunch of products in our
We don't
capitalist
need those products.
society. Right. Most of the time, you just need a baby, a few outfits, a few swaddles, a carrier, like just real
Yeah,
simple. And then because every baby's different, so you don't need
right.
and
You don't
oftentimes
need
you
any of
need
that.
to have your baby share a room with you for the first 6 months.
Right,
And
right.
so, you don't need that big few $100 crib right away. Like a lot of
No,
expenses can come later as you realize, oh, okay, some babies hate swings. Gosh, don't
right,
invest money into a swing if your baby's going to hate it anyways. Like,
right.
those first 3 months, you just need the basic essentials, and then
Yeah,
you can build from there. But really, what you need is postpartum care for mom, or
yeah,
the financial fund for for a postpartum doula, or
Right.
a post, there's a financial fund for cloth diapering if you want to do something a little bit more environmentally sustainable, or
Right.
there's so many financial things that are much more valuable than a
Yes.
bunch of cute outfits and um, um, you know all of the
Yeah.
gadgets and gadgets and
All the things. And that's the thing, like, I think we need to start by changing our language. And like
yeah.
you said, mama blessings as opposed to baby registry, because we
Hmm.
have to continually message how important care of the mama is once the
Yes.
baby's born.
And when
So
you
it's
care for
always about the
mom, then
mama.
you're caring for baby.
Exactly. Baby doesn't need
Mhm.
anything except for mama to be well and
Yes.
healthy and in her mental capacities.
Yes.
And that's what it is, mama blessings. Like, we don't do baby registries anymore. We're going
Yeah.
to let go of all the marketing and the materialistic things that this culture is based on and go back to what's essential, and it's
Yeah.
human to human connection and mothers.
A few years back, I got invited to a baby shower or celebration, and I was the only one that brought things for mom. I brought some nipple butter and some postpartum ice pack pads, and I think some herbal sits for her to soak her bottom in, and all of the things to help her heal. And I remember somebody coming up to me later and was like, "That was so sweet that you brought things for mom too." And I was like, "You've got to be kidding me." Like I was the only one that brought things for mom. Everybody brought things for baby. And
And the things that you brought for mom, that opens up a
so
conversation,
important. So
because
important.
mother probably never even thought that she's gonna need any of that, and now it's like, "Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even think about the recovery, so thank you."
Yeah, or nipple or not nipple, breast pads. They're like, "Oh,"
Yeah.
and I was like, "I was a leaker. I leaked through all my clothes and sheets and all the things." And so they're like, "Oh, I didn't know that was a thing." So yes, exactly. It brings up those conversations of the reality of what postpartum looks like and could be like.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it starts with changing the conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Wow, I mean, I think you gave us so many things to think about, and, a picture of doula and how that's so important. I wanna, like, shout it from the rooftops. Get yourself a doula.
I do. I say it all the time. I've actually had to rein it in a little bit and not give unsolicited advice online.
Oh my gosh, right? Right.
Like, "Hey, have
Doula,
you thought of
doula
a
all day
doula?"
long.
Like, "Do you know what a doula is?"
Right? Right. That's gonna be
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
So it's not like you're marketing yourself. Let me do the marketing for
Oh,
you.
thank you, yes.
Oh my gosh, Rebecca, is there anything else you'd like to add before we end our time together?
Oh, not at this point. I love our conversation has been grateful. It's just thank you so much for doing this and bringing it out to the awareness of so many people. I think that we can't talk about birth and postpartum and families and the ways in which we need to hold that season of life is just so unique and different, and I feel like often we don't really talk about it until we're in it. And so I think that sharing I think in past generations things weren't talked about, and so there's so many healing conversations to be had, with past and present and future generations around what this fertility phase of our life is like. So thank you so
Yes.
much for doing this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we need to keep talking about how precious this
Mhm.
time is. The first 3 years of baby's life and mama's life.
Yeah, and how fleeting it is too.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Belinda.
I look forward to talking to you again.
Okay, thank you. Bye.